Have you ever noticed how much of our daily life revolves around avoiding discomfort? We scroll endlessly on our phones to escape boredom. We fill our calendars with noise so silence does not confront us. We even drown in work, relationships, or entertainment, not because we love them, but because they shield us from that quiet ache we fear to face. But what if every time we run from suffering, we are also running from the very essence of who we are? Imagine the small, almost invisible choices of a normal day. Muting an inner voice with background music, numbing a wound with another drink, or pushing away a difficult conversation by pretending everything is fine. On the surface, these are harmless strategies. Everyone does it. Yet underneath, a deeper question lingers. What truth about ourselves are we refusing to meet in the mirror of our own suffering? Psychology often tells us that pain is not just a signal of something broken. It is also a messenger. And here is the paradox. In avoiding suffering, we may be rejecting the only guide capable of pointing us toward meaning. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of a concentration camp, observed that suffering is not the enemy of life. It is the raw material from which life's deepest purpose is carved. To strip away pain is to strip away part of our humanity. Still, let us be honest. None of us likes to suffer. The instinct to flee is natural, perhaps even necessary for survival. But the question is not whether we avoid suffering. It is whether our avoidance has become so habitual that we have lost the courage to ask what it is trying to reveal. What if, in every tear and frustration, there lies a coded message about our values, our character, and our capacity to love? Think about it. When was the last time you allowed yourself to sit fully with your disappointment without rushing to distract yourself? When was the last time you looked at your loneliness not as a flaw to fix, but as a signal pointing toward deeper connection? Could it be that what we call pain is often the compass of the soul, quietly redirecting us to what truly matters? If this idea stirs something in you, stay with me. Because in the next steps, we will not just explore the question, is avoiding suffering a form of self-abandonment? We will also discover how embracing it may be the path back to ourselves. And before we dive deeper, I invite you, share in the comments. What is the discomfort you find yourself running from most often? And if this reflection already sparked something, do not forget to like this video and subscribe so we can walk this path of meaning together. What if, instead of treating pain as a problem to be erased, we began to see it as a teacher? Imagine a life where suffering was not an intruder breaking down the door, but a messenger quietly knocking, carrying truths about who we are and what we need to grow. How different would your days look if you stopped running and started listening? Picture this. You wake up feeling that familiar weight on your chest, the anxiety of responsibilities, the lingering ache of unmet expectations. Normally, the instinct is to reach for distraction, check emails, scroll through social media, drown the silence with noise. But what if, in that very moment, you paused? What if you gave yourself permission to breathe into the discomfort instead of suffocating it? You might discover that the anxiety is not just fear. It is also a sign that you care deeply about something in your life. Perhaps it is urging you to realign with what truly matters. Let's stretch this vision further. Imagine facing heartbreak not as a cruel injustice, but as evidence that you are capable of loving profoundly. Imagine viewing disappointment not as proof of failure, but as a mirror showing you where your values and your actions have drifted apart. Imagine understanding loneliness not as a void, but as an invitation to cultivate authentic connection. How radically different would your story feel if suffering became not a prison, but a doorway? The truth is, many of us carry silent battles within. We wear masks of competence and control, while inside we wrestle with questions we rarely admit out loud. Am I enough? Am I on the right path? Why does life feel so heavy at times? And yet, these questions, though painful, are also the very sparks that ignite transformation. They are proof that beneath the surface something in us is alive, reaching for more. So here is the invitation. Instead of imagining a life free of pain, imagine a life where every experience, joy, sorrow, triumph, loss, becomes part of a larger story of becoming. A life where suffering is no longer the enemy, but the sculptor shaping your character. Could it be that by embracing pain, we do not lose ourselves, but finally begin to meet ourselves? Hold that thought. Because in the next step, we will confront the uncomfortable truth: why the culture of constant comfort might be quietly stealing our humanity. We live in a world obsessed with comfort. Entire industries are built around making life easier, faster, and less painful. From instant food delivery to binge-worthy entertainment, from self-help cliches that promise quick happiness to social media feeds designed to distract us from boredom, everything whispers the same message: you should not have to suffer. But what if that message is not only false but dangerous? Here is the disruptive insight. By running from suffering, we are not preserving ourselves. We are losing ourselves. Pain is not the interruption of life's journey. It is part of the journey itself. To treat it as an intruder is to misunderstand its role. When we erase discomfort at every turn, we also erase the possibility of depth, resilience, and meaning. We become shallow, fragile, addicted to distraction. Think about how our culture treats sadness. We label it as a malfunction to be fixed immediately, instead of recognizing it as a natural and necessary response to loss, disappointment, or change. But sadness is not an error. It is a signal. It tells us what we value, what we love, and what we cannot live without. By suppressing it, we suppress part of our humanity. The same is true for struggle. When we sanitize our lives from difficulty, we do not become freer. We become weaker. Imagine a muscle that is never challenged. It atrophies. The same happens to the soul when it never wrestles with hardship. Suffering, though painful, is the very weight that strengthens the inner life. Without it, character cannot mature. And here is where the illusion of modern life becomes clear. The more we chase comfort, the less capable we become of facing reality. We numb ourselves to pain, only to find it returning stronger. We run from discomfort, only to discover it chasing us more fiercely. The cycle is endless until we dare to stop and face what we fear. So let us break the illusion. Comfort is not the highest good. Meaning is. And meaning often requires walking straight through the territory we most want to avoid. If we measure life only by ease, we will always come up empty. But if we measure it by depth, by growth, by the courage to suffer with purpose, then every wound becomes part of the story of becoming fully human. In the next part, we will turn to a voice of authority, Viktor Frankl himself, to see how someone who endured unimaginable suffering discovered that pain, when faced with courage, can reveal life's deepest meaning. When we talk about suffering, it is easy to dismiss these reflections as abstract philosophy, until we encounter someone who lived through the extremes of human pain and still discovered a reason to live. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, is one of those voices that cuts through every illusion. He was not writing from the comfort of an armchair. He was writing after walking through hell itself. Frankl spent years imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, where he lost his parents, his brother, and his pregnant wife. He was stripped of everything: freedom, dignity, certainty. And yet, in the midst of hunger, brutality, and despair, he observed something remarkable. Those who could find meaning in their suffering were the ones most capable of enduring it. For them, pain was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a deeper one. He put it simply: those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. This insight did not come from theory, but from watching men and women survive the unbearable because they clung to a purpose greater than themselves. Some found meaning in love for their families, others in faith, others in the hope of finishing work that mattered. The point was not what the why was. The point was that suffering could be endured if it was given meaning. This truth remains urgent today. Most of us will never face the horrors Frankl endured, but we each encounter our own forms of suffering: betrayal, illness, loss, failure, disappointment. And often what makes these experiences unbearable is not the pain itself, but the feeling that the pain is meaningless. Frankl's wisdom challenges us to ask, what if this suffering could be given a purpose? What if it could refine my character, deepen my love, or redirect me toward a truer path? It is not about glorifying suffering or seeking it out. Frankl never suggested that pain is good in itself, but he did insist that suffering is unavoidable. And since it is unavoidable, Our freedom lies in how we respond to it. We can choose bitterness, or we can choose meaning. We can collapse under the weight, or we can let it carve depth into us. And here lies the liberating truth. While life will always include suffering, it also gives us the power to transform suffering into strength. That transformation begins the moment we stop asking, "How can I escape this pain?" and start asking, "What meaning can I uncover within it?" Next, we will expose the hidden dynamics of our modern lives, the subtle ways we disguise suffering instead of facing it, and how this avoidance shapes our identity in silence. Most of us would never say out loud, "I am running away from myself." Yet if we look closely, many of our daily habits are exactly that. Strategies to silence, numb, or outrun the pain that asks for our attention. And the paradox is this: the more we avoid, the more trapped we become. Consider how often we confuse busyness with purpose. We fill our schedules with endless tasks, meetings, and obligations, not always because they matter, but because they distract us from the quiet moments where suffering surfaces. Silence feels threatening, because in silence the truth about our fears, failures, and wounds begins to speak. So we drown it with noise. Or think of how entertainment has become not just leisure, but escape. Binge watching, endless scrolling, compulsive checking of notifications. They are all subtle shields against inner discomfort. These activities are not bad in themselves, but when they become constant companions, they keep us from the deeper work of reflection. They are like painkillers, effective in the short term but leaving the root of the wound untouched. Even relationships can serve as disguises. Sometimes we cling to people not out of love, but out of fear of being left alone with ourselves. Loneliness, though painful, can be a teacher, but we often silence it with shallow connections, avoiding the harder path of cultivating authenticity and depth. Here is the invisible pattern. Every time we refuse to face suffering, we strengthen the illusion that we cannot bear it. This trains us to become more fragile, not less. By shielding ourselves from small discomforts, we unintentionally weaken our capacity to face the greater trials that life will inevitably bring. We mistake comfort for strength, when in truth, comfort erodes resilience. And yet, beneath these patterns, there is always a quiet longing for more. We know that our lives are meant for depth, not just distraction. We sense that running from suffering leaves us emptier, not fuller. The question is whether we will dare to stop running and turn toward the pain, not to be consumed by it, but to be transformed through it. In the next part, we will sharpen this reflection with piercing truths, short, unforgettable phrases that expose the cost of avoidance and reveal the surprising power hidden in suffering. These are not just words to remember, but mirrors to confront. Sometimes a single sentence can shake us more than a long explanation. It is as if truth, when compressed into a few sharp words, pierces through all our defenses. Let us allow ourselves to sit with some of these truths, not as slogans, but as mirrors. To run from pain is to run from yourself. Every time we numb, distract, or silence the discomfort within, we are also silencing part of our identity. Pain is not something outside of us. It is part of our story. Avoiding it means avoiding the very chapters that make us real. Comfort is not growth. It is sedation. We confuse the absence of suffering with progress, when in fact it often means we are stuck. Growth always requires friction. Without it, the soul cannot expand. Your wounds are not interruptions. They are invitations. What feels like life breaking, you may, in truth, be life reshaping you. The crack in your heart is often the space through which meaning enters. Discomfort is the price of authenticity. To live true to your values, your loves, and your conscience will inevitably hurt. But that pain is not a sign you are wrong. It is a sign you are alive. These statements are not meant to glorify suffering, but to awaken us to its role. The danger is not in pain itself. The danger is in the lie that life should be painless. When we believe that, every difficulty feels like a mistake, every struggle feels unfair, and every tear feels like evidence that something is broken beyond repair. But suffering is not proof of failure. It is proof that we are human, in process, unfinished, but growing. Let me leave you with one more. The pain you refuse to face becomes the prison you build for yourself. Avoidance never liberates. It chains us to what we fear. Only by facing suffering directly can we discover the freedom hidden inside it. As you sit with these truths, notice which one unsettles you the most. Often, the phrase that makes us uncomfortable is the very one we need to hear. In the next part, we will explore the paradoxes at the heart of this topic, why the very things we flee from are often the things that can heal us, and how what looks like weakness may in fact be our greatest strength. Life often hides its deepest truths inside paradoxes. They sound contradictory at first, but if we lean closer, they reveal the fabric of reality itself. Nowhere is this clearer than in the relationship between suffering and strength. We tend to think strength means being untouched by pain, unshaken by loss, unbothered by difficulty. Yet the truth is the opposite. Real strength is born from suffering. The wound that breaks you is often the same wound that deepens your capacity to love, to endure, to rise again. Without pain, strength has no roots. Consider this paradox. The more we protect ourselves from discomfort, the more fragile we become. Like a tree shielded from the wind, we grow tall but hollow, unprepared for the storm. But a tree that bends and sways in the wind grows deeper roots. In the same way, every struggle we face stretches the soul, rooting us in resilience. Avoiding pain weakens us. Walking through it prepares us. Here's another paradox. The very moments when we feel weakest are often the times when our character is being forged most powerfully. Think of heartbreak. It feels like collapse, yet it is in heartbreak that we learn the sacred weight of love. Think of failure. It feels humiliating, yet it is in failure that humility and perseverance take shape. Think of grief. It feels unbearable, yet grief teaches us tenderness and compassion like nothing else can. And perhaps the deepest paradox, the path to wholeness runs straight through our brokenness. We spend our lives trying to avoid cracks, but it is through the cracks that the light enters. Suffering strips away illusions, forces us to confront what truly matters, and often gives birth to a version of ourselves we did not know was possible. This is why Viktor Frankl insisted that suffering is not just an obstacle. It can become the means by which we discover meaning. Pain narrows life to its essentials. It clarifies, it reveals, and in that revelation, it remakes us. So here is the invitation. Instead of asking, "How do I escape suffering?" we might ask, "What paradox is hidden inside this suffering?" Because sometimes what feels like the end is actually the beginning, and what looks like weakness is the soil of strength. In the next part, we will uncover the personal reward of facing suffering with courage. Not just survival, but a richer, deeper experience of life itself. Why would anyone choose to face suffering rather than flee from it? The answer is simple, but not easy. Because suffering, when embraced with courage, does not merely wound us, it reshapes us. It transforms fragility into resilience, despair into meaning, and emptiness into depth. The reward of facing pain is nothing less than a fuller, more authentic life. Think of the times you have grown most. Was it during seasons of ease and comfort, or in the aftermath of struggle? Most people, if honest, would admit that their deepest growth came through fire. Pain forced them to confront their illusions, to strip away what was false, and to cling to what mattered most. The reward of that process is a strength that cannot be faked, a wisdom that cannot be borrowed, a compassion that cannot be manufactured. Here is the paradoxical gift. When we face suffering, we not only endure it, we expand because of it. Anxiety teaches us courage. Loss teaches us love. Failure teaches us humility. Each wound becomes a teacher, shaping character in ways success never could. The very experiences we wish to avoid often hold the seeds of our highest virtues. And the reward is not just internal, it ripples outward. A person who has faced suffering without running becomes a safe presence for others. They no longer speak with shallow advice or cliches, but with a depth that comes only from lived experience. Their scars become maps for others who are still lost in the storm. This is one of the most profound rewards of all, the ability to turn personal suffering into collective healing. Viktor Frankl once observed that happiness cannot be pursued directly. It arises as a byproduct of living with meaning. The same is true of strength. It cannot be manufactured through comfort. It emerges naturally when we face suffering honestly. The reward is not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose, and purpose is what makes life not just bearable, but worth living. So here is the challenge. The next time suffering knocks, resist the instinct to run. Instead, ask, what reward is hidden inside this pain? Because the truth is, on the other side of suffering is not just survival, it is transformation. In the next part, we will place all of these insights on a solid conceptual foundation, drawing from psychology, philosophy, and human experience to understand why suffering is not an accident, but an integral part of the human journey. To hold everything we have explored together, we need a framework, a way of understanding suffering not as a random intrusion, but as something woven into the very fabric of existence. Without such a framework, pain feels like chaos. With it, pain becomes part of a larger story. Psychology gives us one starting point. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy rests on a simple but profound truth. The primary drive of human beings is not pleasure, as Freud suggested, nor power, as Adler argued, but meaning. And meaning often reveals itself most clearly in suffering. This is why some people crumble under hardship, while others emerge stronger. Not because the pain is different, but because the story they attach to it is different. Pain without meaning is despair. Pain with meaning becomes sacrifice, transformation, or even love. Philosophy adds another layer. The Stoics, for example, taught that suffering is not the enemy, but the training ground of the soul. Epictetus, himself once a slave, insisted that while we cannot control external events, we can control our response to them. In other words, suffering is inevitable, but victimhood is optional. Pain tests our character, but it also offers us the chance to shape it. History and literature echo the same truth. From Job's lament in the Hebrew Scriptures, to Dante's journey through hell, to Dostoevsky's reflections in The Brothers Karamazov, suffering appears not as meaningless torment, but as the crucible through which human beings confront both their fragility and their greatness. It is the universal thread connecting all of us, across time and culture. And here is the crucial insight. Suffering is not only something to endure, it is something that belongs to life. To demand a life without pain is to demand a life without depth, without growth, without the very conditions that make love and courage possible. For how could we know courage if fear never threatened us? How could we know love if loss did not remind us of its worth? How could we know resilience if nothing ever tried to break us? When we see suffering through this framework, it no longer appears as an enemy to eliminate, but as a teacher to listen to. It becomes part of the architecture of meaning itself. And this changes everything, not only how we interpret our pain, but how we live with it. In the final part, we will bring this journey to a close with a heartfelt call to action, an invitation to face suffering not with despair, but with dignity, courage, and community. We have walked a long path together, from questioning whether avoiding suffering is, in truth, avoiding ourselves, to exploring paradoxes, hidden dynamics, and the wisdom of thinkers like Viktor Frankl. We have seen that pain is not a mistake in life's design. It is a mirror, a teacher, and, if we allow it, a doorway to deeper meaning. But here is the challenge. Knowing this is not enough. Life will still confront you with moments when running feels easier than staying. You will still be tempted to numb, distract, or deny. And in those moments, the question will return: will I run from suffering, or will I dare to meet myself through it? Facing suffering does not mean romanticizing it or seeking it out. It means standing in truth rather than illusion. It means allowing discomfort to reveal what you value, letting loss remind you of love, and letting struggle forge resilience. It means refusing to waste your pain by treating it as meaningless. And perhaps most importantly, it means remembering you are not alone. Every human being carries their share of invisible battles. When you face your own with honesty, you become a companion for others in theirs. Your scars are not just marks of survival, they are invitations for connection. They say to the world, I have walked through fire, and I am still here. You can walk through yours too. So here is my invitation to you. The next time suffering knocks at your door, pause before you reach for escape. Ask yourself what truth is hidden here. What meaning is waiting to be uncovered? How might this very pain become the ground for a deeper life? Because in the end, to flee from suffering is to flee from the path of becoming fully human. But to face it is to step into the mystery of transformation, where pain does not have the final word, meaning does. Now, I want to hear from you. What suffering in your life has taught you the most about who you are? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be the mirror someone else needs today. And if this reflection resonated with you, remember to like this video and subscribe so we can continue building a community where pain is not wasted, but transformed into wisdom. The journey is not easy, but it is worth it, because in facing suffering, we are not only enduring life, we are discovering ourselves.